We are raised to believe that the God Emperor watches over us all. Suffering is our prayer. Faith is our armor. In battle, he offers us redemption.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another video on Warhammer 40k, a universe so dark that even the waifus will burn you at the stake. Last time we talked about the Thousand Sons, an army of sorcerers who puppet their Chaos Space Marine brethren to fight their wars. However, today we are going in the complete opposite direction, an army whose faith carries them to victory and has an extremely aggressive playstyle. The Sisters of Battle. The faith militant of the Imperium of Man, and an army made up of mostly women who are brainwashed from childhood to be absolutely loyal to the God Emperor of Mankind. Let's get into the lore.
Look, Pim, I know it's our job to help this guy and everything, but I think this guy's a lost cause. He's obviously made up his mind. Why don't we just cut our losses and get out of here?
The Sisters of Battle's lore begins all the way back to the 36th millennium, long after the Emperor's entombment on the Golden Throne, and during the reign of the Mad Lord, Gorge Vandire. Vandire, through his own political scheming and planning, had become the sole ruler of the Imperium by controlling both the church and the government. This led to a very bloody reign, as Vandire was an absolute madman, causing mayhem and destruction at even a perceived slight or a simple mistake. Eventually, Vandire would be told about an order of women who worshipped the Emperor of Mankind and had not yet paid fealty to him. Unexpectedly, Vandire didn't rage and demand their heads on pikes, but instead calmly said he wanted to meet with them. He would be met at the gates of the temple where these girls called themselves the Daughters of the Emperor, and though they told him to piss off, Vandire told them that he was chosen by the Emperor himself and that he could show them a miracle. Demanding that the leader of the order shoot him, she did so, and Vandire was swallowed by a flash of light. When the light faded, Vandire was unharmed, and the daughters fell to their knees, worshipping the living saint. Little did these women know that Vandire had tricked them, his personal shield generator protecting him from the bullet. The daughters would become the brides of the Emperor under Vandire, and become his bodyguards, servants, and concubines. Really, you gross perv? However, due to Vandire's rule, the Imperium was falling apart. The church was devastated, the armies of the Imperium were without direction, and their enemies took advantage of the chaos, and hundreds of worlds were lost without a fight. Soon enough, a coalition of Space Marine chapters, individuals of the Adeptus Mechanicus, generals of the Imperial Guard, and a Crusader fleet led by a man who was truly blessed by the Emperor, Sebastian Thor, decided to overthrow Vandire. The United Military Force would go unchallenged all the way to Terra, and even the Terran Defense Forces refused to fire upon them as they too were sick of Vandire's rule. However, the coalition would face opposition from the Brides, who took over the defenses of the Imperial Palace and would fight the coalition to a standstill. During the fighting, the Custodes would meet in secret with the coalition leaders, and the leaders of the coalition would convince the Custodes leader, the Captain General, of all the crimes Vandire had committed. The Custodes would sneak their way into Van Dyer's chambers and would find the brides of the Emperor's leader, Catherine. The Custodes' leader saw that the brides were also victims of Van Dyer's treachery, and he would personally invite Catherine and her retinue into the Emperor's throne room. What happened in the throne room is unknown, but Catherine and her group would come out with a fresh perspective and a need for revenge. The bride stood down, and Catherine executed the barely conscious Van Dyer, ending his bloody reign. The brides were found innocent of wrongdoing and reverted back to being the daughters of the Emperor. But Sebastian Thor, who was now leader of the church, knew that the daughters would be a useful military force to help protect the worlds the church called home. He would use a loophole in the new government's rules for the church, which said that the faith couldn't have men under arms. He organized the daughters into a new military force, and the newly formed Sisters of Battle would march to war alongside armies of the Imperium, launching crusades of faith to reclaim the worlds lost during Van Dyer's reign, and becoming defense forces for worlds that belonged to the church. The sisters in modern 40k find themselves pressed on all sides, along with the Imperium. With the Great Rift splitting the galaxy in two, their faith in the Emperor has never met a greater test, as heresy, traitors, and Xenos seem without end. But with fire and faith, the sisters will purge those they find wanting. For the Emperor protects the faithful, and none are more faithful than the Sisters of Battle. Let's get into the army.
Oh, she'll still find you. Women can smell fear.
The Sisters of Battle are the religious army of the Imperium, and their army ability represents that marvelously. Acts of Faith works like this. During your command phase, or when one of your units is destroyed outright, you gain a miracle die. When you gain a miracle die, you roll it, and whatever result you get to keep stored in a pool for later. During the game, you can replace a roll you made with a miracle dice. So for example, if I roll a damage dice and it rolls a 3, but I have a miracle die that is a 6, I can replace the 3 and the damage roll becomes 6. However, Acts of Faith can only work on the following things you roll for, so don't think this is an entire get-out-of-jail-free card for you. Now, let's get into your units.
What kind of place is this?
Before we get into the Sisters' main units, let's talk about the forces that accompany them. The Sisters make use of auxiliary units such as Crusaders, Archoflagellants, and Death Cult Assassins. These units are meant to either hold objectives, cut down swarm units, or hunt down characters. These units are pretty cheap to field, so you might want to consider taking them, especially since Crusaders are a pretty beefy unit to hold down an objective. However, the downside to these units is, well, they aren't that strong all things considered, so don't expect them to defeat units that are way bigger than them.
I don't care who the IRS sends, I am not paying taxes!
The Sisters of Battle as a whole are meant to be a mix of Space Marines and the Imperial Guard. They have the skills and armor of Marines and the numbers of the Imperial Guard, but the problem becomes that they lack the strength and toughness of the Marines while also lacking the versatility of the Guard. This can make Sisters look like a weaker version of both armies, but in reality, they are their own beast entirely. Sisters units focus on mid to close range shooting combat, preferring the company of bolters, flamethrowers, and anti-armor melta-guns. Most of their units can be equipped with said weapons, and unlike Marines, can bring them in decent-sized quantities. Of course, this means you have to play uncomfortably close to enemy units, but your Sisters can handle it, especially if they are backed up by your melee units. Now, the obvious downside of this is that a lot of the time you'll be trading unit for unit with your opponent, due to your girls being as tough as the Guard. Thankfully, your Acts of Faith are useful to help your units get the kills they need to score the win for you, along with the fact that your Sisters can hold the line on objectives and be pretty scary to charge down, considering the volume of flamethrowers and bolter fire they are packing. You really don't have much to worry about with them.
Why? 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 Why, oh god fucking why?
Sisters' vehicles may be a bit weird design-wise, but just because its design is weird doesn't mean it won't tear holes in your opponent's army. Your tanks take the same principles as your sisters, either being anti-infantry builds with flamethrowers or anti-tank builds with melta-guns, as well as having a pipe organ artillery tank and their own tank that looks like a Space Marine Predator tank had a baby with a Lehman Russ. Your ranged armor units can be an extreme hassle for your opponent to deal with, and with an invulnerable save to boot for your tanks, can be, well, pretty tanky. You also get access to walker units. Sure, they aren't as tough as, say, a Space Marine Dreadnought, but you get a decent amount of them, and they are some of your heaviest hitting melee units. They are able to take on some of the other army's most elite and dangerous units. Your walkers can be pretty formidable, but the downside to your vehicles is easily their toughness. Your tanks and walkers, though consistent with their toughness stats, still lack in that area and can be easily taken out. So be aware that though your units hit hard, they can still be killed easily. Being a religious army, the sisters have their own saints, heroes, and champions to call upon in times of war. And these three units are the very best they can field. Morvenval, Saint Celestine, and the Triumph of Saint Catherine, the very first Sister of Battle. Each one of these units are extremely dangerous, and make the units they join or keep around them even more dangerous. Morven supports your walker units, and makes them even more dangerous in melee, while being a murder tornado herself. Celestine is a problem that just never stops coming back, and can tough out some of the worst damage in the game, so long as her bodyguard unit is alive. And the Triumph of St. Catherine hands out a selection of 2 buffs to your army every turn it's alive. Of course, these 3 units are expensive to take, and the regular weaknesses of Sisters applies to them, but good luck to your opponents trying to stamp them out when they are ripping their units apart, refusing to stay dead, and dealing with even more dangerous shooting units by just being around the coffin dance. And that's the Sisters of Battle, a highly aggressive army who, although they lack in toughness and versatility, they make up for it with sheer firepower and strength. Just remember that your units want to overwhelm your opponent with pure firepower, and with your Acts of Faith being able to maximize rolls or protect your units, you have quite a formidable force that will have anyone down bad for faith! Thanks for watching, and when we come back, we will be talking about the Space Marines again, but this time, they will be about the Sons of Sanguinius, the Blood Angels. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and hit that bell icon for notifications. And don't forget to join the Patreon. You get to vote on which armies we talk about next, and see videos early. See you next time.